The stars had never seemed so quiet before Captain Jake Morrison received the message that would change everything. He was drinking his morning coffee aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon when the communication system came alive with sounds unlike anything humans had ever heard. The strange chirps and clicks filled the bridge as his crew scrambled to make sense of the transmission. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks from her station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she tried to decode the alien message. "It's coming from just outside Jupiter's orbit. Whatever sent this has technology we've never seen before." Jake set down his coffee and moved to the main screen. The message played again, but this time the ship's computer had begun translating the sounds into words. The voice that emerged was cold and mechanical, yet somehow proud. "Greetings, primitive inhabitants of the third planet. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come to offer you a place in civilized space, though your world appears most unsuitable for intelligent life." The bridge fell silent. After decades of searching the stars for signs of other intelligent life, humanity had finally received an answer. But something about the tone made Jake uneasy. He had been a diplomat long enough to recognize condescension when he heard it. "Send a response," Jake ordered. "Tell them we welcome peaceful contact and would be honored to meet with them." Hours passed before the alien ship appeared on their sensors. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the Horizon, and shaped like nothing human engineers had ever built. Its surface gleamed with a silver-blue metal that seemed to shift colors in the light of the distant sun. Jake prepared carefully for the meeting. He wore his best diplomatic uniform and brought along Dr. Amy Foster, their xenobiologist, and Commander Lisa Brooks for security. As they approached the alien vessel in their shuttle, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being examined like insects under a microscope. The alien ship's docking bay was enormous and filled with a strange, sweet-smelling atmosphere. Waiting for them was a group of beings that looked like a cross between birds and reptiles. They stood upright on 2 legs, but their bodies were covered in iridescent feathers that sparkled under the artificial lights. Their leader, who introduced himself as Ambassador Zektar, was taller than the others and wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes. "Welcome, humans," Zektar said through a translation device that hung around his neck. His voice was high and musical, but Jake noticed how his large, dark eyes never seemed to blink. "We have studied your world from afar. It is remarkable that any intelligent species could survive on such a dangerous planet." "Dangerous?" Jake asked, genuinely puzzled. "Earth has its challenges, but we've learned to adapt. We consider it home." "Ambassador." Zektar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was not pleasant. "Your world is what we call a death world, Captain Morrison. The gravity is crushing, the weather is violent, and your surface is covered with creatures that exist only to kill and consume each other. Most civilized species would die within hours of landing there." Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "If you don't mind me asking, what kind of world do your people come from?" "The Valerian. Homeworld is a paradise compared to your harsh Earth," Zektar replied with obvious pride. "Our gravity is gentle, our climate is stable, and our wildlife is peaceful. We have evolved beyond the brutal struggle for survival that still defines your species." Jake felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his expression neutral. "We're grateful for your contact, Ambassador. We hope to learn much from joining the galactic community." But that presents a problem," Zektar said, his feathers ruffling slightly. "The Galactic Council has strict policies about Deathworld species. For your own safety and the safety of others, you will need to be relocated to more suitable worlds. We have several colonies where your people can live under proper supervision." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "Supervision? Ambassador, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Humans have no intention of leaving Earth. It's our homeworld. Captain Morrison, you must understand that this is not a request." Zektar's tone became sharper. "Your species shows clear signs of primitive aggression. Your history is filled with wars, your entertainment involves violence, and your very bodies are designed for combat. Such traits have no place in civilized society." "Commander O." Lisa Brooks had remained silent until now, but Jake could see the tension in her posture. She had been a Marine before becoming a naval officer, and her instincts were clearly warning her of danger. "With respect, Ambassador," Jake said carefully, "humanity has moved beyond many of our past conflicts. We've achieved global cooperation and peaceful exploration of space. We're not the primitives you seem to think we are." "Your peaceful exploration?" Zektar made that unpleasant laughing sound again. "Captain, we have observed your military vessels disguised as exploration ships. We have seen your weapons that can destroy entire cities. We know of your training facilities where you teach your young to fight and kill. These are not the actions of a civilized species." Dr. Amy Foster spoke up again, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "Those are defensive measures, Ambassador. Earth has natural disasters, dangerous wildlife, and yes, we've had conflicts in our past. But we've learned from them. Our military exists to protect, not to conquer." "Protection," Zektar repeated, as if the word tasted bitter. "This is exactly the primitive thinking we must correct. In civilized space, protection is provided by the Council. Individual species do not need weapons or military forces." Jake felt the situation spiraling out of control, but he had to try, once more. "Ambassador, I appreciate your concern for our welfare, but humans will not abandon Earth. It's not just our planet. It's part of who we are. We've spent millions of years adapting to it, and we're not about to give up now." The aliens, feathers flattened against his body, a sign that Dr. Amy Foster would later learn indicated extreme displeasure or fear. "Captain Morrison, you're making a grave mistake. The Galactic Council has dealt with primitive species before. They always choose cooperation over destruction. You would be wise to do the same." "Are you threatening us?" Commander Lisa Brooks asked, her hand instinctively moving toward her sidearm. "Threatening?" Zektar stepped back and his escort of Valerian guards moved closer. "Commander, your very presence here is a threat. Your species carries weapons even to diplomatic meetings. You have turned your entire world into a fortress. You train your children for war before they can properly walk. These are not the actions of a peaceful people." Jake realized that nothing he could say would change the alien's mind. The Valerians had already decided what humans were, and no amount of explanation would convince them otherwise. "Ambassador, I think this meeting has gone as far as it can. We'll return to Earth and discuss your proposal with our leaders." "There is nothing to discuss," Zektar said firmly. "The Council has decided. You have one of your solar cycles to begin the evacuation of your population to suitable worlds. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force." As they returned to the horizon, Jake's mind raced with the implications of what had just happened. Humanity's first contact with alien life had not only failed, but had apparently marked them as a species to be conquered or controlled. "Captain," Lisa Brooks said quietly as they watched the alien ship disappear into the distance, "I don't think they understand what they're asking for." "No," Jake agreed, staring out at the cold stars. "I don't think they do." Back on Earth, President Daniel Hayes listened to Jake's report with growing concern. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in capitals around the world. General Carl Davis was already mobilizing military forces while Admiral Susan Wright prepared the space fleet for possible conflict. The message was clear: humanity would either submit to alien authority or face the consequences. But as Jake Morrison had realized during that fateful meeting, the aliens had made one critical error in their calculations. They had assumed that a species from a death world would be easy to intimidate. They were about to learn just how wrong they could be. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never witnessed such heated debate. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, and melodic tones as they discussed what they called the human problem. Speaker Thistleon of the aquatic Merdaki floated in her water-filled pod at the center of the hall. Her blue-green skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns that showed her deep concern. As the current leader of the council, she had called this emergency session after receiving Ambassador Zektar's disturbing report from the Sol system. "Fellow beings of the council, Taisalan's voice bubbled through the translation system. We face a situation unlike any in our recorded history. The species called humans have refused our generous offer of relocation and protection. They insist on remaining on their death world, despite clear evidence that such an environment has made them dangerously unstable. A low rumble of disapproval swept through the chamber. The assembled representatives had all evolved on worlds that were garden paradises compared to Earth. They could not understand why any intelligent species would choose to remain in such a hostile environment. Counselor Vexhun of the insectoid Thrix species rose from his seat, his forearms gesturing wildly. Speaker Thissalan, I have reviewed the data collected by our observation probes. These humans engage in something they call extreme sports, where they deliberately put themselves in mortal danger for entertainment. They leap from great heights with only fabric to slow their fall. They race vehicles at speeds that would be fatal if they crashed. This is clearly the behavior of a mentally damaged species. Indeed, agreed Elder Mortep of the crystalline Zephyri, her voice chiming like breaking glass. Our xenopsychologists have studied their entertainment media. Their stories glorify violence and conflict. They create fictional scenarios where beings fight to the death for the amusement of others. Such bloodthirsty tendencies have no place in civilized society. Ambassador Zektar stood to address the assembly, his feathers still ruffled from his encounter with the humans. Honored representatives, I must warn you that these humans are even more dangerous than our initial assessment suggested. Their leader, Captain Morrison, showed no fear when I explained the consequences of defiance. Their military officer actually reached for a weapon during our diplomatic meeting. They are clearly incapable of peaceful coexistence. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and angry chittering. In the 10,000 years of recorded galactic history, no species had ever threatened violence during first contact. The very idea was so alien to their way of thinking that many representatives could barely comprehend it. Furthermore, Zektar continued, they have covered their entire planet with what can only be described as military installations. They call them cities, but our scans show that each one could be easily converted into a fortress. They have weapons, capable of destroying large areas, and they have pointed these weapons toward space. They are clearly preparing for aggressive expansion. High Advisor Colreen of the energy beings known as the Flux spoke in harmonious tones that resonated through the chamber. This confirms our worst fears about Deathworld species. The constant struggle for survival has twisted their minds toward aggression and violence. They cannot conceive of a universe where conflict is unnecessary. Dr. Zenthara, the Council's chief xenobiologist, activated a holographic display showing comparative evolution charts. Honored Council, my research shows that species from stable, peaceful worlds develop cooperation and harmony over millions of years. But species from hostile environments like this Earth develop what they call survival instincts. These instincts make them see threats everywhere and respond with violence to any perceived danger. The solution is obvious, declared War Commander Korvax of the Reptilian Draconian Empire, his scarred hide gleaming under the chamber's lights. We must act quickly before they can spread their violence to other worlds. A show of overwhelming force will convince them to surrender. All Deathworld species eventually realize they cannot stand against civilized military might. Speaker Taisalan's bioluminescent patterns shifted to indicate agreement. War Commander Korvax speaks wisdom. The humans must be contained before they become a threat to galactic peace. How large a fleet do you require for this pacification mission? Korvax's reptilian eyes gleamed with confidence. 200 ships should be more than sufficient, Speaker. The humans have only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Their weapons are primitive chemical explosives and simple energy beams. My fleet uses quantum disruptors and graviton cannons. The engagement should last no more than a few hours. Excellent, Thissalan replied. The Council authorizes immediate military action to relocate the human population to more suitable worlds. We will establish a monitoring station in their system to ensure they adapt properly to civilized behavior. As the Council session ended, the representatives filed out with the satisfaction of another problem solved. None of them questioned whether their assessment of humans might be wrong. In their experience, all intelligent species eventually accepted the wisdom of council guidance. The few that initially resisted had quickly surrendered when faced with superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Earth was preparing for war in ways the Galactic Council could never have imagined. Colonel Ben Parker stood in the newly constructed Xeno Defense Command Center, built deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Banks of screens showed activity across the planet as humanity mobilized for its first interstellar conflict. The speed of the mobilization would have shocked any galactic observer who understood what they were seeing. "Colonel, the conversion of the civilian shipyards is ahead of schedule," reported Engineer Kate Miller, her fingers flying across her tablet as she coordinated industrial efforts across 6 continents. "The mining companies have already begun retrofitting their equipment for military use. It turns out that machinery designed to work on Earth is a lot tougher than anything we've seen in the alien designs." Ben nodded grimly. "Good. What about weapons production?" "That's where it gets interesting," Kate continued. "Dr. Foster's analysis of the alien technology shows they build everything to very precise specifications. Their equipment fails when it's damaged or stressed beyond design limits. Our stuff is built to work even when it's half broken because Earth is hard on machinery." Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her workstation, where she was studying the captured alien technology from the diplomatic meeting. "Colonel, I've made some disturbing discoveries about these Valerians. Their bones are hollow like birds, their muscles are adapted for low gravity, and their nervous systems are designed for very controlled environments. I don't think they can survive in conditions that humans would consider merely uncomfortable." "Explain," Ben ordered. "They've never had to adapt to changing conditions," Amy continued. "Their homeworld is stable, predictable, safe. They've evolved to be very efficient in perfect conditions, but they have no backup systems for when things go wrong. Humans are the opposite. We're inefficient compared to them, but we keep working when everything falls apart." Across the planet, similar preparations were taking place. In underground factories, workers converted civilian manufacturing lines to produce military equipment. Mining operations in space began harvesting asteroids not for rare metals, but to create improvised weapons and defenses. Marine Sergeant Alex Turner was training the first human space combat units in repurposed cargo containers that had been converted into zero-gravity training facilities. His approach to preparation would have horrified any galactic military advisor. "Listen up, Marines," Alex barked as his trainees floated in the simulated zero-gravity. "Forget everything you think you know about fair fighting. The aliens think they're coming to arrest some primitives. They're expecting us to surrender when we see their big ships and fancy weapons. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when you threaten a human's home." The training exercises that followed would have been considered war crimes by galactic standards. Alex taught his Marines to fight in damaged equipment, to use their environment as a weapon, and to never surrender even when facing impossible odds. He taught them that losing was not about dying, but about failing to protect Earth. "Remember," Alex told his troops, "they think they're dealing with animals. Let them keep thinking that right up until the moment they realize their mistake." Admiral Susan Wright coordinated the space-based defenses from the Lunar Command Center. She had spent her entire career preparing for conflicts between human nations, never imagining she would be planning humanity's first interstellar war. But, as she studied the tactical situation, she began to see opportunities that the aliens would never expect. "They're bringing 200 ships," she told her staff officers. "In their experience, that's overwhelming force. But they're thinking like politicians, not warriors. They want to make a statement, not fight a war. That gives us advantages they don't even know exist." President Daniel Hayes received hourly updates on the preparations from his secure bunker beneath Washington. The weight of speaking for all humanity in this first interstellar conflict was enormous. Admiral Korvax watched his fleet approach the third planet with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. 200 of the finest ships in the Draconian Navy moved in perfect formation through space, their hulls gleaming with the advanced metals and energy shields that made them superior to any primitive technology. "Admiral, we are receiving multiple signals from the human vessels. reported his communications officer, a young draconian whose scales still showed the bright green of inexperience. They appear to be laughing? Korvax frowned and listened to the audio feed. Strange sounds were indeed coming from the human ships, sounds that his translator could not properly convert. He had heard many species beg for mercy or cry in fear when faced with Council fleet power. He had never heard laughter. Ignore their primitive noisemaking, Korvax ordered. Begin the demonstration attack. Target their largest vessel with a single quantum disruptor blast. That should convince them to surrender. The largest human ship was called the Liberty, a converted cargo hauler that had been hastily fitted with weapons and armor plating. To Admiral Korvax, it looked like exactly what it was: a desperate attempt by primitives to create a warship from civilian equipment. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching the alien fleet approach on his screens. His ship had started life carrying mining equipment between Earth and the asteroid belt. Now it bristled with improvised weapons and carried a crew of volunteers who had never expected to fight in space. "Jake, they're targeting us with some kind of energy weapon," reported Commander Lisa Brooks from the tactical station. "Looks like they want to make an example of us." "Let them try," Jake replied calmly. "All ships remember the plan. Let them think they're winning right up until they realize their mistake." The quantum disruptor beam lanced out from the draconian flagship, a weapon capable of tearing apart any known material. It struck the Liberty's forward section and dissolved a chunk of armor plating, exactly as Admiral Korvax had intended. What happened next was not in any of his tactical manuals. Instead of exploding or surrendering, the Liberty continued moving forward. Sparks and atmosphere vented from the damaged section, but the ship kept fighting. More troubling to Admiral Korvax, the human crew seemed completely uninterested in the fact that their vessel had just taken what should have been a fatal hit. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported with confusion in his voice, "the human vessel is still operational. The crew appears to be repairing the damage while under fire." Korvax stared at his screens in disbelief. Through the breach in the Liberty's hull, his sensors showed human crew members working in the damaged section. They were wearing primitive pressure suits and wielding crude tools, fixing their ship while in the middle of a battle. Such behavior violated every principle of civilized warfare. "Impossible," Korvax muttered. "No intelligent species fights with damaged equipment. Order all ships to target that vessel. Destroy it completely." But as his fleet opened fire, the human ships did something that shattered Admiral Korvax's understanding of space combat. Instead of maintaining formation and exchanging fire at a respectful distance, they charged directly at his vessels. Lieutenant Colonel Pete Stone commanded a ship that had once been a deep space mining platform. The Prospector was ugly, tough, and equipped with industrial cutting lasers that had been designed to slice through asteroids. Pete had spent 20 years working in the asteroid belt, and he knew something that Admiral Korvax did not. Space was full of things that could kill you, and the only way to survive was to keep working when everything went wrong. "All right. People," Pete announced to his crew over the comm system. "These fancy aliens think they can scare us with their pretty light show. Let's show them what real workers can do." The Prospector accelerated directly toward the draconian battle line, its industrial cutting beams carving through space. The alien ships tried to maintain their careful formation, but Pete's vessel slammed into their neat ranks like a wrecking ball through a crystal sculpture. "Ram them!" Pete shouted as his ship collided with a draconian cruiser. The impact would have been suicide for any civilized species, but the Prospector had been built to survive collisions with asteroids. The alien ship crumpled like foil around the mining platform's reinforced hull. Across the battle zone, similar scenes were playing out as human vessels engaged the enemy in ways that violated every rule of galactic warfare. Ships continued fighting, after taking damage that should have forced immediate retreat. Crews worked in areas of their vessels exposed to vacuum. Commanders ordered attacks that any sane species would consider suicide. Admiral Korvax watched in growing horror as his perfect U formation dissolved into chaos. Human ships were ramming his vessels using improvised weapons and fighting with a ferocity that his tactical computers could not analyze. Worse, They seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Admiral, the mining vessel has boarded the cruiser Sevtar," reported his communications officer, whose green scales had now turned pale with fear. "The human crew is. They are fighting inside our ship with construction tools." Pete Stone led his boarding party through the corridors of the alien cruiser, wielding a plasma cutter designed for cutting through solid rock. The draconian crew they encountered were physically larger than humans, but they had never evolved to fight for their lives. When Pete's miners came charging at them with tools that could slice through metal, the aliens retreated in panic. "These things aren't warriors," Pete called out to his team as they secured another section of the ship. "They're bureaucrats with fancy equipment. Keep pushing forward." The draconian ship had been designed with the assumption that borders would never be breached. Its internal defenses were minimal, its crew quarters were luxurious, and its corridors were wide and comfortable. It was perfect for civilized beings who expected warfare to follow established rules. It was completely unsuitable for resisting humans who treated the invasion as just another dangerous job that needed to be done. Back on Earth, Engineer Kate Miller was coordinating the battle from the Xenodefense Command Center. Her screens showed the engagement around Luna, and she was amazed by what she was seeing. "Colonel Parker, the alien weapons are more powerful than ours, but they're not designed for this kind of fighting," she reported. "They expect their enemies to retreat when damaged. They don't know how to deal with opponents who keep attacking no matter what." Colonel Ben Parker watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "That's the difference between us and them. Kate, they fight to win battles. We fight to survive. And when survival is on the line, humans don't quit." Dr. Amy Foster was monitoring the alien communications, translating their increasingly panicked messages as the battle continued. "Ben, listen to this. Their admiral is asking his ships why the humans won't surrender. He actually used the phrase, 'This is not how warfare is conducted,' 3 times in the last message." "Good," Ben replied. "The more confused they are, the better our chances." Captain Jake Morrison's Liberty had taken 17 direct hits and was still fighting. Half the ship was open to space. The crew was working in pressure suits, and the engines were held together with improvised repairs. By any civilized standard, the vessel should have been abandoned hours ago. Instead, Jake was preparing for his final attack. "Lisa, how close can we get to their flagship?" he asked Commander Brooks. "Close enough," Lisa replied with a smile that would have terrified any alien who saw it. "Jake, you realize this is completely insane?" "Of course it is," Jake laughed. "That's why it's going to work." The Liberty accelerated toward Admiral Korvax's flagship, trailing atmosphere and debris. To the alien commander, it looked like a dying ship making a desperate final gesture. He ordered his gunners to destroy it, but the human vessel kept coming, through the barrage of enemy fire. At the last moment, Jake's ship fired every weapon it had directly into the flagship's main reactor. The combined impact of the Liberty's ramming attack and the weapons fire caused a cascade failure that tore the Draconian command ship apart. Admiral Korvax's last thought as his ship exploded around him was a question that would haunt the Galactic Council for years to come. How had primitives with crude technology defeated the finest fleet in civilized space? The answer was simple, though the aliens would never understand it. Humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had learned to treat impossible odds as normal working conditions. When the Galactic Council sent a fleet to intimidate them, humans responded the same way they had always responded to deadly threats. They got back to work. The Battle of Luna ended with 30 Draconian ships destroyed and the rest retreating in disorder. The human fleet had lost only 3 vessels, and 2 of those crews had survived by evacuating to other ships. As Admiral Korvax's surviving vessels limped away from the Sol system, they carried with them a message that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans had not just won a battle against superior numbers and technology, they had done it while laughing. For the first time in galactic history, a council fleet had been defeated by the very primitives they had come to pacify. But as the surviving aliens would soon discover, this was only the beginning of their education about what it meant to threaten Deathworlders. War Marshal Vexthor of the Saurid Empire could not believe the reports he was reading. 170 ships of the Draconian fleet had limped back to Council space with tales of human savagery that seemed impossible. Ships that continued, fighting while torn open to space. Warriors who used construction tools as weapons. An entire species that seemed to treat death as merely an inconvenience. This cannot be accurate. Vexthor growled to his aide, a smaller saurid whose scales rippled with nervous energy. No primitive species defeats a council fleet. Admiral Korvax must have made tactical errors. War Marshal. I have reviewed all the combat recordings, the aide replied carefully. The humans employed tactics that our military computers cannot classify. They fought in ways that violate every principle of warfare we know. Vexthor studied the battle recordings again, his reptilian eyes focusing on the most disturbing images. Human soldiers working in the vacuum of space to repair weapons while under enemy fire. Ships ramming into council vessels with no regard for their own survival. Crews continuing to fight even after their vessels had taken damage that should have killed everyone aboard. This is not warfare, Vexthor declared. This is madness. But it will not happen again. I am taking 500 ships to the Sol system. These humans will learn what real military might looks like. Unlike Admiral Korvax, War Marshal Vexthor was a true military commander. His ships were built for war, not diplomacy. His crews were soldiers bred for conquest, not peacekeepers maintaining order. The Saurid Empire had been the military arm of the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years, and they had never failed to conquer a target. But as Vexthor prepared, his fleet events on Earth were moving in directions no alien could have predicted. General Carl Davis stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire solar system. Red dots marked the approaching alien fleet, now numbering 500 vessels. Around the table sat the leaders of every major nation on Earth, all united for the first time in human history by a common threat. Ladies and gentlemen, the aliens are coming back with 5 times as many ships, General Davis announced. But I have good news. While they were regrouping, we have been preparing. Operation Homecoming is now active. President Daniel Hayes leaned forward. Explain Operation Homecoming, General. Mr. President, we are evacuating all non-essential personnel and equipment from Earth's orbital facilities. Every space station, every satellite, every mining platform is being stripped down and either brought to Earth or converted into weapons. When the aliens arrive, they will find nothing to capture, and everything they face will be designed to hurt them. Colonel Ben. Parker activated another section of the display. The evacuation is just the beginning. We have been studying the wreckage from the first battle, and Dr. Foster has made some remarkable discoveries about our enemies. Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward, her tablet displaying biological data that would have shocked any alien scientist. General, what we have learned about the Galactic Council species is disturbing. They have evolved beyond the point where they can adapt to hostile conditions. Their immune systems cannot handle environmental stress. Their psychology breaks down when faced with genuine threats to their survival. What does that mean for us? Asked President Hayes. It means they are powerful when everything goes according to plan, but they cannot function when faced with chaos. Amy continued. Every species in the Council evolved on worlds where survival was easy. They never developed the mental flexibility that humans take for granted. When we force them to improvise, they fail. General Davis nodded grimly. That is why Operation Homecoming will work. We are not going to fight them in space where they have advantages. We are going to make them come to Earth, where every condition favors us. Across the planet, the most massive military mobilization in human history was taking place. Factories that had been producing consumer goods were now making weapons. Mining. Equipment was being converted into planetary defense systems. Even civilian vehicles were being modified for potential military use. In the asteroid belt, Major Alex Turner was preparing the most dangerous part of the operation. His teams had been placing improvised explosives throughout the mining installations that were being abandoned. When the aliens came to investigate the apparently empty facilities, they would find unpleasant surprises. Remember, people, Alex told his demolition teams, the aliens think like bureaucrats. They will want to catalog everything, study everything, understand everything. We are going to turn their curiosity into a weapon against them. The explosives his teams were placing were not sophisticated by human military standards. They were simple devices made from mining charges and industrial chemicals, but they were hidden in ways that would be invisible to species that had never had to worry about ambushes or booby traps. Admiral Susan Wright coordinated the space defense from her new command center built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. Her fleet was much larger than it had been during the first battle, but the ships were still converted civilian vessels held together with improvised repairs and desperate ingenuity. "Admiral, the alien fleet has just entered the outer system," reported her communications officer. "They are moving in perfect formation and scanning everything methodically." "Good," Susan replied. "That means they are following their standard procedures. Signal all units to execute Plan Chaos." Plan Chaos was exactly what its name suggested. Instead of meeting the alien fleet in organized battle, the human ships scattered throughout the solar system like seeds in the wind. Some hid behind asteroids, others powered down completely and drifted like debris. A few even landed on airless moons and shut down all systems. War Marshal Vexthor watched the human response with confusion. His tactical computers had been programmed to fight organized fleets with predictable strategies. They had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that simply disappeared. "Where are they?" Vexthor demanded of his sensor operators. 500 human ships cannot simply vanish. "War Marshal, we are detecting scattered energy signatures throughout the system," reported his chief tactical officer. "But they do not match any known fleet configuration. Some appear to be damaged vessels drifting without power. Others seem to be hiding behind natural obstacles." "Cowards," Vexthor snarled. "They know they cannot face us in open battle. Begin systematic sweeps of all hiding places. We will root them out one by one." But as the Saurid fleet began investigating the seemingly abandoned human positions, they walked directly into the trap that Earth had been preparing. The first explosion came when a Saurid cruiser attempted to board what appeared to be a disabled mining station. Major Alex Turner had packed the facility with enough explosives to crack an asteroid, and the alien ship disappeared in a ball of fire that could be seen from Mars. "What was that?" War Marshal Vexthor demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied with growing alarm. "The mining station exploded when our boarding party entered. It appears to have been booby-trapped." More explosions followed as Saurid ships investigated other apparently abandoned installations. Each one had been turned into a massive bomb designed to destroy anyone curious enough to investigate. The aliens had never encountered such tactics, because no civilized species would deliberately destroy valuable infrastructure to hurt their enemies. But humans were not civilized by galactic standards. They were survivors from a world that had taught them to use any advantage available. Captain Jake Morrison emerged from his hiding place behind Europa in the Liberty, now rebuilt and armed with weapons salvaged from the first battle. His ship looked even more improvised than before, with alien technology bolted onto human systems in ways that violated every principle of engineering safety. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast to the scattered human fleet. "The aliens are confused and spread out. Time to show them what guerrilla warfare looks like." The human ships burst from their hiding places like wolves attacking a flock of sheep. They struck at isolated alien vessels, did as much damage as possible, then disappeared back into the clutter of asteroids and debris that filled the solar system. War Marshal Vexthor found himself fighting an enemy that refused to stand still and be destroyed. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck his formations, and vanished before his weapons could target them effectively. Even worse, every engagement taught the humans more about his tactics, while teaching him nothing useful about theirs. "This is not warfare," Vexthor raged as another of his ships fell victim to human hit-and-run attacks. "This is banditry. These humans fight like animals." He was more correct than he realized. Humans were fighting like the apex predators they had always been, using intelligence and adaptability to bring down prey much larger than themselves. The galaxy had never seen warfare conducted by a species that had evolved to hunt, rather than to graze. As the battle raged across the solar system, Dr. Amy Foster monitored alien communications from her bunker deep beneath the Earth's surface. What she heard confirmed her worst fears about what humanity had awakened. "Ben, the aliens are starting to panic," she reported to Colonel Parker. Their communications are becoming increasingly desperate. They keep asking for instructions on how to fight an enemy that will not follow proper warfare protocols. Speaker Thistleon floated in her water-filled chamber, staring at the reports that had just arrived from the Sol system. Her bioluminescent patches flickered with patterns of disbelief and growing terror. War Marshal Vexthor's final transmission had been brief and filled with a fear she had never heard in a military commander's voice. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They treat death as an acceptable outcome, if it allows them to hurt us. We cannot win against beings who consider survival more important than victory. I am withdrawing what remains of my fleet. Of the 500 ships Vexithor had taken to human space, less than 200 were returning. The rest had been destroyed by tactics that the Galactic Council's military computers could not even classify. Worse, the humans had captured several intact vessels and were already studying Council technology. Thistleon activated the emergency beacon that summoned the full Council to immediate session. Within hours, representatives from across the galaxy had gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their voices creating a chorus of fear and confusion. Fellow beings, Thistleon began, her voice trembling through the translation system. We face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. The humans have not only defeated our second fleet, they have done so using methods that challenge everything we understand about intelligent behavior. Elder Mortep of the Crystalline Zephyri spoke first, her chiming voice filled with distress. Speaker, my people have analyzed the battle recordings. These humans deliberately sacrifice their own vessels to destroy ours. They fight in conditions that would kill our crews within minutes. They show no fear of death, no respect for proper military protocols, no understanding of civilized warfare. It is worse than that, added Counselor Vexhan of the Thrix, his forearms gesturing wildly. They have begun adapting our technology to their crude systems. Our captured ships are being converted into weapons that combine our advanced systems with their barbaric approaches to engineering. The result violates every principle of safe design. High Advisor Colreen of the Energy Beings spoke in tones that resonated with ancient fear. Honored Council, we have awakened something that should have remained sleeping. These Deathworlders represent chaos given intelligence and purpose. They threaten the very foundations of our ordered civilization. As the Council debated in growing panic, Earth was transforming itself into something the galaxy had never seen, an entire world dedicated to warfare. President Daniel Hayes stood before the largest gathering of world leaders in human history. The United Nations building had been reinforced and expanded to accommodate representatives from every nation, corporation, and organization on Earth. For the first time since humans had developed civilization, the entire species was united behind a single purpose. Citizens of Earth, President Hayes began, his voice carried to every corner of the planet. We have learned that the galaxy sees us as monsters to be controlled or destroyed. They believe that because we come from a dangerous world, we cannot be trusted to exist freely among the stars. They are wrong about our nature, but they are about to learn why threatening Earth's children is the worst mistake any species can make. The speech that followed would be remembered as the moment humanity stopped thinking defensively and began planning to take the war to their enemies. Operation Sleeping Giant was about to begin. General Carl Davis coordinated the massive mobilization from the new Strategic Command Center built deep beneath the Earth's crust. Every factory, every shipyard, every research facility on the planet was being converted to support the war effort. But this was not the desperate conversion of civilian resources that had marked their earlier preparations. This was the organized fury of an entire species that had decided to end the threat permanently. Dr. Foster, what is the status of our technology integration program? General Davis asked. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her workstation, where she was coordinating the efforts of thousands of scientists and engineers working to understand alien technology. General, we have made remarkable progress. It turns out that alien systems are incredibly sophisticated but also incredibly fragile. They are designed to work perfectly under ideal conditions, but they fail catastrophically when stressed beyond their design limits. And our systems? Human technology is crude by their standards, but it is also incredibly robust. We build things to work when they are damaged, when conditions are bad, when everything goes wrong. When we combine their sophistication with our durability, the results are extraordinary. Engineer Kate Miller activated a holographic display showing the new generation of human warships. They looked nothing like the converted civilian vessels that had fought the first battles. These ships were purpose-built for war, using principles learned from studying captured alien technology, but designed with human understanding of how warfare actually worked. "General, the first batch of Defiance-class ships will be ready within 6 months," Kate reported. "They are faster than anything in the alien fleet, tougher than our old mining ships, and armed with weapons that combine alien energy systems with human projectile weapons. The aliens have never faced kinetic rounds accelerated by quantum field generators." Colonel Ben Parker was overseeing the training of what would become humanity's first interstellar assault forces. The volunteers came from every military on Earth, but they also included civilians whose skills were needed for the coming campaign. Miners who knew how to work in hostile environments, engineers who could repair anything with whatever materials were available, and scientists who could turn any discovery into a weapon. "The alien psychology profiles are complete," Ben announced to his training staff. "Dr. Foster's analysis shows that Council species cannot function when their support systems fail. They have no backup plans, no improvisation skills, no ability to adapt when conditions change. Our job is to make sure conditions always change." Major Alex Turner had been promoted to lead the new Xenological Warfare Division, tasked with developing tactics specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. His approach would have horrified any civilized military commander. "People, we are not planning to fight fair," Alex told his officers. "We are planning to fight smart. Every battle will be designed to force the aliens into situations their psychology cannot handle. We will make them afraid, confused, and desperate. And then we will show them what desperate humans can accomplish." The training exercises that followed were unlike anything in military history. Human forces practiced fighting in conditions that would have been considered impossible by galactic standards. They learned to operate in vacuum, to repair equipment while under fire, to continue missions even when their support systems had failed completely. Admiral Susan Wright commanded the growing space fleet from her flagship, the newly constructed Indomitable. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering combined with alien technology, designed to be everything the aliens would not expect. "Admiral, the long-range scouts have detected alien fleet movements," reported her intelligence officer. "It looks like they are massing forces from across the Council for a final assault on Earth." "Good," Susan replied with a smile that would have terrified any alien who saw it. "Let them come. By the time they arrive, we will be ready to take this war to every Council world in the galaxy." 6 months later, the largest fleet in galactic history approached the Sol system. Over 1,000 ships from dozens of species, carrying weapons that could sterilize entire planets. The Galactic Council had decided that the human problem required a final solution. But as the alien armada entered human space, they found something they had never expected. Earth was gone. Not destroyed, but evacuated. The entire population had been moved to hidden colonies throughout the solar system. The planet's surface was covered with automated defense systems and massive industrial complexes that continued producing warships even in humanity's absence. More disturbing to the alien commanders, human ships were already waiting for them, hundreds of vessels unlike anything in their databases, crewed by beings who had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the lead human squadron from his new ship, the Retribution. The vessel incorporated everything humanity had learned about alien technology, combined with everything humans knew about fighting to survive. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast to the human fleet. "The aliens think they can end this by destroying our home. They do not understand that humans carry their home with them wherever they go. Today we show them the price of threatening our family." The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned that some sleeping giants should never be awakened. Human ships fought with a coordination and ferocity that no alien species could match. They used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, weapons that combined alien sophistication with human brutality, and a determination that treated retreat as simply not an option. Ambassador Zektar, now a prisoner aboard, Admiral Susan Wright's flagship, watched the destruction of the Council fleet with growing horror. Admiral Wright, your species has doomed itself. Even if you win this battle, the galaxy will never accept you as equals. You have revealed yourselves to be exactly the monsters we feared.